It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of Jerry Springer, opera, Hangman, and musicals in Mufti at the York Theatre. Plus an interview with the Mad Woman of Central Park West herself, Phyllis Newman. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. And good evening, Leslie.
Good evening, Charlie.
And how are you tonight?
I'm great tonight. I'm excited about talking about the first show that I get to introduce. And that first show is Jerry Springer, as you said, the opera.
Yeah.
And it is operatic, let's put it that way.
Right.
It is a musical in operatic form in two acts. The first act is absolutely a Jerry Springer show, and we're part of the audience at the show.
Right, and so is most of the cast when they're not being on stage.
Right, the cast takes up the entire first two rows of the...
And it's typical Jerry Springer fare. I'm having an affair...
How do you know what typical Jerry Springer fare is? How many Jerry Springer shows have you actually watched?
All right, admittedly, not that many, but then again, who actually admits to watching Jerry Springer?
I watched one today. To make sure, and boy, did they nail it. As crazy as they were on stage, the show is even crazier.
This is my Jerry Springer moment. I don't want this moment to die. So dip me in chocolate and throw me to the lesbians. I don't want this moment to die.
Haven't seen your best friend, your best friend, your best friend, but baby, I love you.
Okay, let's bring on Peach's best friend. Please welcome Zandra.
Dirty whore, filthy, dirty, manky, skanky, slut whore. That is of no concern, though it was not what I deserve. I merely come to take you down to hell where you will serve.
Yeah, I don't want to serve in hell because at this stage of my career, that would be a sideways move.
If there's a large lady who wants to be a pole dancer, there's actually a little thing in the montage opening of a large lady being a pole dancer. They must have,
Of the actual Springer show.
On the actual Springer show. And the wonderful Terrence Mann is brought in to play Jerry Springer. And he does a wonderful job because Jerry Springer is this little island of somewhat sanity in the middle of all the insanity that goes on around him. And that's the first act. And there's a little subplot in that. I mean, each of the people has their own little problem. But there's the guy who's the warm-up comic. And the warm-up comic has aspirations of taking over Jerry's job, or at least becoming going on camera more.
And he believes that he's Jerry's BBF.
Yes, he believes that Jerry really cares about him. And when he finds out that he's not, he becomes something very different in the second act.
Right.
And the second act is Jerry goes to hell, basically.
Well, he has to mediate dispute between the devil, Jesus, God, and Adam and Eve.
That's quite a dispute.
Just and if you thought Jerry Springer couldn't get any more outrageous than a typical Jerry Springer show or the first act, you're right, because the second act really just doesn't work as well as the first act.
Well,
when they're doing the Jerry Springer we know and love.
Yeah.
It really, I hate to say it, but I really had a good time.
No, so did
this.
I. But the wonderful thing about the second act is Will Swenson as the devil.
Okay.
He walks away with the show. He is. I've never seen him better or sexier, and I've seen him in a lot of shows. And I love Will Swenson, and I was mesmerized by him as the devil.
Tell Leslie to go to the devil. We know who she's going to choose.
In a red suit, and I'm going to have to fight his lovely wife for him. Yes, I know how that goes. But anyway, it's a wonderful cast. The rest of them are people I don't know. We may see them again.
I'm
we
sure
may
we
not.
will.
But a lot of semi-operatic voices. The show was directed by John Rando. It was designed by Derek McLean. Both of them did an absolutely stellar job. And I have to say a special shout out to Sarah Lowe, L-A-U-X, who did the costume design. And boy, was she spot on with those costumes.
Yes.
The large ladies sort of hanging out of their dresses, you know.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes.
yes, indeed.
Yes.
And
And even the transvestite or transgender, I don't know what he was,
We're
who
not
was
sure,
having
yes.
an affair with the guy
Yes.
who was having an affair with his fiance, who was also having an affair with his fiance's best friend. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
oh my
But
goodness.
the costumes were just
And
terrific.
hell just can't compete with that.
And this is in this small space at the Signature, where
Right.
you know I think we also saw Sweet Charity in
Yes,
the same
with Sutton
space,
Foster.
and they've done wonderful things with
Yeah.
setting it out so that you know for the audience. I'm so happy that they're doing musicals there.
Now, who
and-
wrote this show? This was
two guys I've never heard of before, but I'm sure that we will hear about them again. Richard Thomas and Stuart Lee, not that Richard Thomas,
Yes, okay.
and Stuart Lee. And this show, of course, has been around kicking around for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
It was done in a concert reading of it
Right.
here. It was done full out in the West End and was very successful over
Yes.
there. But of course, they don't really know Jerry Springer, and I don't know whether we really know Jerry Springer.
Well, I would imagine if they're watching it in London, they must think, oh, this has to be totally fictional.
Well, yes, or look at those Americans, there they go again.
Really,
you know,
yeah.
that kind
yeah,
of
well,
thing.
listen, you
Well,
wonder what kind of person wants to go on that show.
What would you, well, obviously, duh. What kind of people? I mean,
right.
they can't wait to fight. They start in. They
yeah,
are ready to go.
Well, they know what's expected of them now.
Evidently, yes,
and,
that's
and
true.
they want their 15 minutes.
Or 15 seconds, whichever comes
whatever,
first.
yes.
What would you give this?
Well, embarrassingly, I would give it 3.75.
Oh, unabashedly, I would give it 4.5, and I'd really almost give it 5 just for Will Swenson.
I don't think I was disappointed with the second act. It really.
I understand. It was disappointing, but for the first act alone, and then, as I say, for Will
First
Swenson.
act was fabulous.
You know.
All right. Let's move on to, well, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like this showed up to a British Jerry Springer show. This is Hangman.
If there were such a thing, yes.
Yes, well.
There might be, you
I'm
know,
sure
we don't know.
They can be, listen, they can be just as down and dirty and
As
sleazy
Americans,
and
Wow.
low taste as we can.
Okay.
But believe me.
Does the Queen know?
Yeah, I think I have no idea what the Queen watches, but look, the same people that bought us Masterpiece Theater also bought us Benny Hill.
That's
so,
true. Many
you know,
years apart.
It's not
Yeah.
all the Thunderbirds. Anyway, this is Hangman by Martin McDonough. And it asks two questions. Number one, what do you do when you're a hangman and they outlaw hanging in your country? And two, what happens if one of your, and what's the word for it? Victims, no. Clients? I don't know. One of the people you hang, and it is hanged, not hung, may have been the wrong person. In other words, may have been innocent. And these are two of the themes. And it centers on a guy named Harry, who was a hangman, beautifully played in a very Oliver Hardy-like fashion by Mark Addy. He's very pompous, very stuffy, very... And he actually has a Stan Laurel, his assistant, Reese Shearsmith, who's, I guess, about as competent as Laurel tends to be.
Well,
on
but
this.
he comes across as a little rat-like character.
Yes.
He's a very rat-finky kind of character.
Right. So he's not. Again, he's not really Stan Laurel, but it's kind of when you pair him with Addy, it's that kind of relationship, and it can be very funny, except when the play gets very dark during the second act. And
Well, it opens up dark. It opens up with a guy
All right, with a guy
screaming,
being-
I'm innocent, being
Right.
hanged in front of your eyes, basically.
Right,
More or less.
But then it kind of moves in a more comic fashion with the guy. He also, in addition to being a hangman, he owns a pub, and we're at the pub with all his cronies and his friends, you know, and he's being interviewed about the ending of hanging, and and his rival. He's like considered to be the second greatest hangman.
Right. Albert Pierpont.
Yes, Albert Pierpont, and they're basically tearing the guy down, which sets the stage for a wonderful confrontation with Maxwell Caulfield as Pierpont, as the rival hangman. And he's only on stage. It's a very short thing, only like 10 minutes.
Well, he
maybe
comes in the
maximum.
second act. He's
Right.
talked about so much that you
Yes.
think you know him.
And you do, but you don't. And the confrontation to me, is the high point of the play, because just such a wonderful performance by Addie, but especially by Caulfield.
Well, of course, Addie has to carry the whole play, and Caulfield gets to come in and
Yes,
steal it. You know, I love roles like that.
And
Yes,
he does. But I don't want to give the plot away, but I will say there is another hanging.
Well, okay, I would have gone a different way with it.
Okay.
There is a character who comes in, and we don't know who he is. He's menacing, but he's also very attractive. He's young. And I kept thinking somehow he was connected to the first guy who got hanged, but he comes in and he's talking about the article. But we never know. We never find out. And that, to me, is one of the problems of the play, because it's unresolved. I walked away going, okay, what was that all about, really? Because nobody really faces up to anything. Nobody really takes
Responsibility.
Thank you. Responsibility for actions that have been committed. And there we are. And maybe that's his point. I don't know.
I think it is.
He did just do 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri, which is up for all sorts of Academy Awards in a week.
I think, did he also do Pillowman?
He did Pillowman, but I mean, one is a movie and one is a play. Pillowman is a play, and 3 Billboards is a movie that's up for Oscars right now. And this is much more in the pillow. I think he wants this to be in the Pillowman genre, but
I'm sure he does.
It's quite as. Pillowman was really scary.
Yes.
This is not
This is
scary.
a little, not scary, but a little strange and annoying, but very enjoyable, because you have, some good leads, a good ensemble backing them up. And so it's kind of hard to come to a conclusion on this one, but I am going to give it 3.5.
I would certainly give it, I think overall, I think my disappointment at not knowing the things that I wanted to know and not feeling that the answers were really there to find. I think I'd go with your 3.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
Now, we're going to go over to a series that we both enjoy immensely.
We had a really interesting chance to see 2 out of 3 of the Jule Styne
Musicals in Mufti. Now, Musicals in Mufti, which is basically the York Theatre puts these musicals together. They have 36 hours to rehearse them. And they're very often obscure musicals. One of the ones we saw was Bar Mitzvah Boy, which did have music by Jule Styne, but had the only production that I'm aware of ever being in America prior to this was in a small Jewish theater.
It's actually in 92nd Street Y.
Yes.
They sponsored it.
Which I saw, but I had totally forgotten I saw that. I saw it. It's based on a British movie. I think it was a television movie about a young man in England who's being bar mitzvahed. And it's 2 acts. The first act is the normal hustle and bustle that a family has to go through when they're preparing for a big event. The second act concentrates on the boy, and it's basically, he's scared. He says, am I really ready for this? Am I ready to become a man? And everything that he associates with becoming a man.
The boy is named, it's the Green family. The boy's name is Elliot, but the show opens on Elliot. I mean, Elliot introduces the family, and he introduces the problem that he's going to be bar mitzvahed, and then you understand that he's not sure about it. But his family is very well played. You have Laurie Wilner, whom you really liked as the mom. Ned Eisenberg, who's been around forever as a character actor. I've never heard him sing before. And then Julie Benko played the sister.
Very good.
And Tim Jerome, who has been around for a very long time, also got to play the grandfather. And those they were just exceptional people. It was a very simple production, as most of these are. They pull on a chair when you need a chair, pull on a table when you need a table, and then move it away again. So they're staged readings in essence, but they're with song. This was directed by Annette Jollies. I don't know who she is. I've never seen her work, but it was interesting. It was slight, very, very slight. I can see why it never really got anywhere here. I could see it being done in synagogues or in temple or in
and maybe this will alert people to its existence.
Perhaps, and certainly it does give you an insight into what a family can go through for this so-called event. A 13-year-old
we've seen a couple of these like this on Broadway. Only they dealt with weddings.
Yes, but I must say that Peyton Lusk, did I get his name right? Peyton Lusk? No. Yes, Peyton Lusk, which is a great name, did a marvelous job as the boy. I mean, to have that much, I don't think he's quite 13, but to have that much stage presence and be able to carry a show, which is what he has to do, I thought was really exceptional.
And with that little time to prepare, it really, again, is it a great musical? No. Was it worth seeing? Yes. It was. It did have entertainment value. And just, historically, You know, if you're a fan of Jule Styne.
Well, in the canon of lesser-known
Yes.
Julie Styne plays. I mean, it's, as you said before, it's not Gypsy. It's not.
No, it's well, actually, I didn't say that on the air, but it's not. Look, it's not Gypsy. It's not Funny Girl.
Right.
The other one was one of the most infamous musicals ever to go on Broadway. Not because of anything in the musical
Same
itself, but because of what the producer David Merrick did. This was Subways Are for Sleeping. It opened, I think, in 1962. Has not been seen since. And Merrick, being Merrick, found there were 7 New York dailies at the time with critics who were listened to and important. Merrick found 7 men with the same names, wined them, dined them, took them to the show and said, "How do you like it?" Well, of course, they told him it was wonderful. He quoted them. He took out an ad with their pictures.
In the New York Times.
In all 7 papers.
Oh, all 7 papers, okay.
Now, the Times caught on to this, and they canceled the ad, and so did a lot of the other papers. Some of them ran it, some of them did. But it was the biggest publicity bonanza.
Right.
And it
and
is
that
still
list was outside
talked
the
about,
theater.
And it is still talked about today.
Right.
In fact, he had this idea for many years, but he had to wait for Brooks Atkinson to retire because there wasn't anybody else named Brooks Atkinson.
Yeah, and these days they wouldn't find another Leslie Hoban Blake
There you
either.
go.
But, you
Although
know.
there are several Charles Grosses in the phone book.
Indeed.
But you have
indeed.
to find the phone
And there
book.
are Leslie Blakes. It's the Hoban that sort of, you know, with the parentheses. That sort
All
of
right,
sets it up.
so we're safe.
So we're safe. But I have to say that aside from the subject matter, which is kind of really strange, even for the 60s, it was about a group of very well-dressed homeless men
Right.
who met together in the subway every day and took their orders from a young guy, very charismatic young guy,
Right.
played by Eric
William Morris.
Eric William Morris.
A man with a name like that, he should never have trouble finding a job.
No, and his name-
in the entertainment
His
industry.
name in the show is Tom.
Yes.
And Tom kind of books them in the way that in Three Penny Opera.
Well,
You know, they
well,
they
he
get
had
booked.
been. We find out he had been a big mogul, big C of O, who overextended himself, overleveraged himself, lost everything, and now he is also homeless.
Yeah.
And he spends his time coordinating things, helping people
Right.
find rooms,
Right.
odd jobs, and it's not saying too much that in the end of the play they invent 40 years before its time the gig economy, when you think about it.
Every day, just go along, dawn till sundown. Here's the rundown. Every day that comes once in a lifetime. Take each day and gather the rosebuds in it. Till each minute. Every day that comes once in a lifetime. Think of now. Tomorrow is waiting in the wings. Who knows what it brings?
Yes, and that's all well and good because we're looking back through that particular
Prism.
framework, but it doesn't work on its own standing for me because, again, looking back from this perspective, nothing's very charming about the homeless living in the subway.
Well,
so that makes for a problem.
The thing is, it was suggested by a book by Edrin G. Love, who actually had been a homeless
Yes.
person, and and you have to remember, what they do is they dress in these suits and they dress clean because they don't want to be noticed.
No.
They don't want people to see them as homeless, so maybe they were there or are there under our nose. I don't know. I would love to read the original book.
In the 80s, I used to go to a church and stay overnight and give out donuts and coffee
Right.
to the people who came to sleep there. They were the most well-dressed, well-spoken people who were down on their luck. This is 1980s. For real, and they would go from the church that they slept in to another church where they would take a shower, and they could get fresh clothing.
Right.
And then they would spend the day wandering around New York. I ran into one of them in Macy's once.
Well, these people here in this show, they end up finding odd jobs, and it's by the way, it's by Comden and Green. The
Yes.
original production starred Phyllis Newman, who was part of this production, helped them, found them old scripts, had suggestions, and we'll be talking with her a little later.
At the top of the show, they show the
about
front
it.
page of 4 or 5 different versions with different dates on them.
Right, on it. And it is a very nice score. Comden and Green did the book and the lyrics. Styne, of course, did the music.
Well, there were 1 or 2, the Magic, Get on the Magic Ride or something for the subway. But
Right.
there was another song that became rather well known, Be a Santa. I think that became a
Well, there was
jingle.
only one that I had recognized because I recalled Comden and Green had done it in their a party with Comden and Green.
Oh, yeah? Which one was that?
The one about capital gains, where he's
Oh,
telling
I
how
didn't
he.
know. I didn't
But
remember
anyway, Eric William Morris, again, 36 hours to rehearse. amazing. Holds the stage so well.
Yes, in a role played by Sidney
charismatic.
Chaplin originally. Very charismatic.
Excellent. And there is, Elise Allen Lewis as a reporter who is basically doing an expose on the whole thing. And of course, this being a 1960s musical comedy, they fall in love.
Right under your eyes, many girls like me, caught in the wearing mixer, hoping for someone to set us free. Oh, when will it be?
Yes, and what's very fun is that they got married, the two of them. Tom and Myra, her name is, got married at some point during the show. I think her name is Myra. Anyway, whatever her name is.
And then there's Gina Milo, who plays the Phyllis Newman role.
Phyllis Newman role.
And she spends about 90% of the show in what I'm told was a very well Velcroed towel. And she has this one number that is supposed to sizzle, and it should. I mean, she's a talented young woman, and she's gorgeous, even without the towel.
Maybe more without the towel. We don't know.
Well, maybe. Well, you do see her dressed later in the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, and it just fell flat. And I'm going to attribute that more to the lack of time. It's a big number. Lack of preparation, time to prepare.
Yeah, I missed something there.
Yeah.
It felt like there was supposed to be something there.
I was a shoe in the shoe in the shoe and when I'm from Mississippi, back there where I come from. Not Massachusetts, not Minnesota, but Mississippi. There I was born, one frosty morn, right around dawn. They said, Mama, look, this baby's somebody pretty. Mark my words, she'll wind up in Atlantic City. I rolled up and showed up and blown up in all the right directions. No contests, this was.
I would like to get the album in here.
But there's a second number later on where she and David Josephberg, another secondary love interest, the two of them,
Right.
a guy named David Josephberg, who plays somebody named Charlie, which I thought was kind of
Yes.
sweet. The two of them had great chemistry,
Yes,
and I
they
thought
did.
their number came off very well.
He is also one of the homeless people, and he's originally meeting on behalf of a friend, but of course they fall in love.
Right.
It's a cute show. It's an enjoyable show. I think we had agreed that given the limitations of the rehearsal and preparation, we're not going to rate them. But I think, I enjoyed both shows. Right. I can see why Bar Mitzvah Boys never really had a big production here, and I can see why Subways, despite the amazing publicity, only ran 206 performances on Broadway. But I am actually glad I got to see it. I'm going to actually seek out the album because I want to hear the score, fully rehearsed and fully orchestrated. And I'm actually going to look for the book because I'm kind of curious to see how, real this
the book by
this
Mr.
whole thing. Because I think the thing
good
that
luck on finding that.
yeah, well, the library, I'm hoping.
Oh, okay, probably. Yeah.
And but because I think the thing that maybe everybody has the problem with is, as you said, they're in too good shape to be homeless.
Well, that isn't exactly what I said, but okay. No, that's not what I said.
It was too clean for you, I think. I think that's the impression then.
Well, okay, it's just I found that the subject matter didn't lend itself to a musical in my mind, and so I came in with there's a prejudice built in which I should be able to overlook, and it's really hard to.
Okay.
So,
well,
but we have something
Phyllis
special.
Newman was in the original. She was married to Adolph Green, and she was in the original production. In fact, as she would say later on, she was the first actress to get a role by not sleeping with the writer. Well, we had a chance to catch up with her. Let's take a look. Well, we're here with the Mad Woman of Central Park West herself. It's Phyllis Newman.
On the evening of the revival of a musicals in Mufti version of Subways Are for Sleeping, which won her Tony.
You were in the original version.
There was only one version.
There was only one version.
Until now.
That's right. That's right.
And you, your husband wrote the lyrics.
Yeah, he and Betty Comden wrote the lyrics in the book. And Julie Styne, of course, wrote the music.
And you wore a towel the whole show.
That's right. Much shorter than that one.
Really?
I got to tell them it's not short enough. Because it was much more of a threat, if you got a really short towel.
How did you get it to stay on?
Oh, it was made. It had all the stuff on it.
Staples.
What?
Staples. That always
Yes,
works.
exactly.
What about David Merrick, who
One of the most infamous
Time like
movies.
it was rotten. You know?
Okay. Well, why don't we go to your daughter Amanda? She's also a lyricist.
Yeah, she's wonderful, and I saw her last night at the 92nd Street Y. She did something, she wrote it, and then she sang one of the songs, and everybody was wonderful. It was about the lyricists who worked with Leonard Bernstein.
Oh, goodness.
And it was a terrific evening. And she
Phenomenal.
was. She's a very gifted woman. I'm very proud of her.
Is she working on anything now?
Oh, yeah, she's got 2 big shows.
Could we come back to Subways and Miss Newman
Okay.
for a second?
Okay.
If that's okay. I just wondered, you put all these shows, I saw all the scripts, they showed very cleverly
Right.
at the top.
Right.
Now, how much of this did you have to do with putting them all together?
Well, I must say with Stuart Ross also, who was wonderful. And the two of us got together and went through scripts. There were tons of them. We picked a few, and we tweaked, as they say, and we cut things, and we put things together. I mean, it's still the show, but we worked on it.
Well, it's difficult material for this particular time,
Yeah,
necessarily.
well, it took us
so,
time. We really worked, and then he really worked, and he did a wonderful job. Yeah.
is it very different from the original?
Oh,
I,
no, not at all.
Not at all.
No.
Obviously, the music is the same. I
Yeah,
didn't know if
the score is exactly the same. So is the book. It's just no one would know the difference.
Well, you had a wonderful cast, and it was
Yeah,
beautifully
everybody's
directed, and
terrific,
it
yeah.
moved like a dream. So
Absolutely.
you must be very proud.
I'm very happy. I really am, and I didn't know how I'd feel, but I'm very happy about it.
Happy and tired. A proud
I
mom.
wish we'd had more time. It
Oh,
was
I
later
did
in the
too.
evening, and Mrs. Newman was
Right.
kind of tired. But
Yes.
it was just such a thrill to see her and get
Yes.
to talk to her. Really.
And I actually, there was this. We were there opening night. I was at the opening night party, and I sought out Gina Miller, who played her role, and she said she was aware that Phyllis Newman had a shorter towel, and that she would be very happy to wear a shorter towel in her performance.
I bet she would too. Maybe that would make it a bigger number. Maybe when we saw opening night, maybe the second night was a better,
Well,
we'll
I
never
think, you know,
know, but-
if you see it later in the week,
Yeah.
they've had a chance to, so
Yeah.
I guess we have to keep that in mind. But
We do.
had we done that,
Well, that's why we're
we
not
wouldn't be able
rating
to
it.
talk. We wouldn't be able to talk about
That's
it.
true. But yes, well, okay, I
Yes.
agree.
Well, you know, unfortunately, we didn't get to ask Phyllis Newman about her husband's relationship with Betty Comden.
Oh,
Everyone
right,
thought they were
well,
married too.
I know. And Betty Comden had a husband and a family, and you know
yes.
and of course the Comdens. I mean, the Greens had their wonderful children.
Yes,
Amanda
well, their
and
daughter
Adam.
Amanda is active, is a musical theater, is a lyricist.
And Adam writes for Vanity Fair about the theater. So aside from everything else,
We've
that he
actually
does.
had her on tour.
You did before,
Yes,
before my
before you.
time,
Yes,
yes.
before
But
you.
that's wonderful.
When I was seeing Another Critic.
Yeah, well, I wasn't gonna. Okay.
And I think that wraps it up for this week. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.